All right, good evening. I'm Dr. Michael Twyman, calling live in from Apollo Cardiology, my office in downtown St. Louis, Missouri. Actually, it's downtown Clayton in St. Louis, Missouri. Tonight, we're going to talk about pulse wave analysis, or how stiff are your arteries, utilizing the MaxPulse device. So I will do a demo on myself. Normally, this test is best done no caffeine for 2 hours, which I'm good for. But optimally, probably best in the morning time when you're less stressed out, and probably haven't eaten would be the most sensitive test. But you can eat before this test. Just caffeine has an effect on your blood pressure, which might affect this test. So this is a non-invasive test of looking at how stiff your arteries are. It uses a pulse oximeter type probe, and it does some special measurements on the small blood vessels in the fingertip. So, quick anatomy. This is a much larger size of heart. It's about the size of a cow heart. But typically, when the blood comes back from the lungs into the left side of the heart, goes through your left atrium, down into your left ventricle, the main pumping chamber. The pumping chamber squeezes the blood out your aorta, and then the blood goes to your head, your arms, and your legs. So when the blood leaves the heart, that's called systole. When the blood is like relaxing and starting to fill the heart up again, that's diastole. So we're looking at essentially how elastic these arteries are. So how much do they spring open, and how fast do they kind of squeeze back down? Older arteries are stiffer arteries, are like concrete or lead pipes. So this test will tell you, are the arteries springy and healthy, or are they stiff and hard and likely aging faster than they should because you have atherosclerosis or something's going on with the artery health. Very likely you have endothelial dysfunction, where the arteries don't release enough nitric oxide to dilate those blood vessels. So I'm going to try to do some one-handed action here. So this is, for those that haven't seen it before, this is my view at Apollo Cardiology. I don't have the lights on here pretty much ever, and use natural light. So, all right, so let me flip this around and show you here. So this is actually the MaxPulse probe, and then this is the computer system that runs it. So I'll clip it on my finger here as such, and then I will run this. So normally you want to have your arm resting on the table, sitting quietly, calm and relaxed. I'll be talking during this, so it may not be a fully accurate test, but I will show you what you got. So test is 3 minutes long. This is going to be my heart rate ultimately when it starts measuring it. My heart rate's not that fast. And then there's a kind of a bar graph on the bottom, 3-minute test. So the top is the plasma graph. So each one of these is a heartbeat. So it is initially the systolic wave where the heart is squeezing, the heart then relaxes and diastole, and then the system starts over again. So when the blood rushes out of your heart, it goes down the aorta, down to the arteries and the legs, and then you get a reflected wave back. So the blood doesn't necessarily flow backwards, but a pressure wave flows backwards, and that's what this little notch is. So then they measure something called the accelerated plasma graph. So they do a second derivative of the acceleration of the arterial pulse wave. Fancy way of saying how fast does the artery expand and how fast does it contract. So the second derivative is a calculus term. So this will be, very fast uptake is a healthy artery, a slower gradual uptake is a stiffer artery. And then at the bottom, it's measuring an HRV tachogram. So HRV is your heart rate variability. That's the beat to beat difference of each heartbeat. And the higher your heart rate variability, the better cardiac conditions you generally are, or you're not overstressed from your exercise. But low heart rate variability is associated with badness, essentially. You have more cardiovascular events, more heart attack, strokes when you have low heart rate variability. And you're also more prone to getting infections, such as COVID-19. So we're about halfway through the test here. So no numbers pop up on the screen other than my heart rate right now. And then once it goes through the 3 minutes, then we'll go through the report. So I know a lot of people are calling in tonight. Thank you for joining. Tonight's all about pulse wave analysis, essentially how stiff are your arteries, which is a metric for how healthy the arteries are. So this is just one of the gadgets and toys we have at Apollo Cardiology to test your arterial health. I've done previous talks on the carotid intimomedial thickness scan, which is the ultrasound looking at the health of the artery in your carotid artery, the artery on the sides of your neck. And then also we have a device here called the EndoPat, which looks at endothelial function. The endothelium is that inner lining of your blood vessels. It's 1 cell thick. If your endothelium gets damaged, you're much more likely to develop plaque in your arteries. So those are the 3 non-invasive tests we have in the office that are a little bit different than your general cardiologist is going to be doing, looking at cardiovascular health. So I got about 20 seconds left on this, and the numbers will pop up, and then we'll go through the report. While that's going on, kind of show you the kind of down the barrel of an artery that would be normal. This would be an artery that has a 70% stenosis or blockage in the artery. Not necessarily that this person's likely to have a heart attack, but they're likely to have symptoms when they do exertion. They're likely to have chest pain or shortness of breath or exercise intolerance. But the goal is find out where the person is on this pathway. Do they have a 20-30% blockage, 50% blockage, 70% blockage, and then find out the root cause of what's driving it and work on reversing it. So that's what we do here at Apollo Cardiology. All right, so now we got the other results. So little finger probe pops off. So the finger probe is measuring the flow inside the fingertip. As the blood rushes down into the artery expands and then contracts fast, contracts and expands. So the faster it does that, the better things are. So the first page is measuring the heart rate variability and the amount of stress your system is under. So my average heart rate is not normally 95. It's going to be a little bit up. I just did a Peloton interval training before coming here, and also ate at dinner about 30 minutes ago, so resting heart rate's going to be up after that. So it'll give you your high heart rate, low heart rate, and ectopic beats. Probably because I was moving, I had some ectopic beats. Normally that would mean if you're having an early beat or a premature beat. If you have a lot of ectopy, you got to figure out why the heart is irritated. So the next thing is the heart rate variability tachogram. There's 2 little red bars. The wider the red bars are, the greater the heart rate variability is, and the better the cardiovascular condition is at that point. So there's 3 metrics of the 4 metrics of the autonomic nervous system that they're looking at. So your autonomic nervous system has the sympathetic tone, that's your fight or flight response, has the parasympathetic tone, the rest and relaxation response. Normally it should be a ratio of about 6-4. Again, I was talking during this, and I just ate and did an interval training, so my sympathetic tone is much higher than my parasympathetic. That's out of balance for me normally. But it does measure the different frequencies, so this is the total power, the very low frequency, the low frequency, and the high frequency. All mine look to be in the quote normal range. If you are way high, your body's under a lot more stress. So moving along to the other side of the screen, it has your stress score, lower the better. Ideally, it should be at least less than 50. And then my autonomic nervous system activity is normal. My fatigue index is normal to good. And then my electrocardiac stability is normal. That basically means how much ectopy are you having, or early beats. At this point, my autonomic nervous system balance is slightly unbalanced. But again, I was talking, just exercised, just ate, so it's probably not exactly a accurate representation of my normal steady state baseline. And then the interesting thing, and I find this fascinating when I talk to patients about this, is it can somewhat tell you, are you more under physical stress or more mental stress that's driving your autonomic nervous system dysfunction? So right now I have some very high physical stress. After a 30-minute interval training on Peloton, that should be expected. My mental stress, a little bit high, shouldn't be too bad. I did a couple interviews today, feel pretty good, so don't think that's too much. And then normal stress resilience. So this is the thing that I mostly am interested in when I look at with patients is, your stress resilience. How likely are you able to bounce back from this, or how fast can you bounce back from this? If you sleep well, you usually deal with your stress. Yes, I might have some high physical stress, but I'll sleep tonight, and this will be back to low or normal in the morning time. But if you have poor stress resilience, it's going to take longer for you to recover. So next, moving on to the next page, where it's measuring the accelerated plasmograph. So this was the top, where it's basically just the regular beat. So systole, the heart beats. There's a little notch here. So the blood is rushed down to your legs. The wave comes back and gets measured in your fingertip, and then the heart is relaxing during diastole. Then they do the second derivative, a fancy calculus, basically the rate of rise or the acceleration of this graph. And so the faster this goes up, the better. So it should go down and quickly back up. So there's 7 different types of artery vascular health. type 1 and 2 are normal. Type 6 and 7 are pretty bad. Tonight mine was in type 2, which is that's usually where I'm at, either type 1 or type 2. So this is very excellent for me. It measures the arterial elasticity and the peripheral elasticity. So the AE is essentially your large blood vessels. That's your aorta. Your aorta is like the garden hose that's connected to your heart. When the blood leaves the heart, it goes in the aorta. The aorta should act kind of like an accordion and dilate quickly to receive that blood and then contract back down. So higher the better, score out of 100. So I have optimal arterial elasticity of my big arteries. The peripheral elasticity, high score again. This is a measurement of the small blood vessels. So the small blood vessels would be basically down like your toes and such. And so the furthest things from your heart tend to break first. So your blood pressures, I should say your pulses in your feet might decrease if you have diabetes or significant atherosclerosis. It's going to be typically further from the heart. So the small blood vessels look good. So I have type 2 arteries, that's normal. Both my large artery and small arteries are elastic and springy. So things look pretty good with my arterial health. Yes, I might be under a little bit of stress right now, but that's expected. You stress your body with exercise, you stress your body with mental work, you do your meditation, your heart rate variability training, sleep well, and then you recover, and then you do it again. So let me flip it back to me, and we'll chat some more and answer any of your questions about the device. All right. Got a few other people joining, so thank you for joining, everybody. This is on replay on Instagram TV, and I'll also be up on my YouTube channel a little bit later. So we'll click back in. All right. Yeah, this is pretty cool. It's 3-minute test to do the heart rate variability. If you're only wanting the arterial elasticity, it takes less than 1 minute. So when patients come to my office, we check the blood pressures, both arms, with a old school manual blood pressure cuff that has a mercury tube. We check their heart rate, their pulse oximeter, so their oxygen saturations, and we check their weight. And then while we're working them up, we also have them do a nitric oxide test strip in their saliva. So nitric oxide is a very important gas that dilates your blood vessels. The better your nitric oxide production, the better your blood pressure, better arterial health, less likely to have things sticking to your arteries and building up in the walls of the arteries. And also helps with sexual health. So a couple of weeks we'll probably be doing a talk on sexual health optimization. And then once patients are all checked into our practice, I hook them up to this machine and then show them essentially how much stress they've been under the past day or two. Is it more physical stress, more mental stress, and then look at the arterial elasticity. So now commonly we get patients coming into the office saying like, oh, my blood pressure's only high when I'm at your office. And they tell me, well, I got white coat hypertension. Well, I'm wearing black. I don't wear white in the office very often. So I usually tell people, if you're stressed out in my office getting your blood pressure checked, you're probably stressed at home. You're probably stressed when you're driving your car. So your arteries don't care where you're at. They just look at the stress that they're under, hemodynamic stress, flow stress. So if this test tells me your artery elasticity is a 3 or 4, you have high blood pressure at home all the time, and you need to monitor it and then improve your endothelial function, improve your nitric oxide production. There's many things we've talked about in the past that help with that, but sunlight, green leafy vegetables and beets, exercise are kind of the lifestyle things. And of course, there's different supplements and medications that can help it as well. So, any questions coming in at the moment? And while we're waiting the questions come in, next week we're going to be talking all about cold thermogenesis, or how to use cold therapy to improve your overall health. Cold thermogenesis, how do you basically make energy more efficient in your mitochondria? Frequently tell people, where do you keep your proteins and your meats? You keep it in the refrigerator, so it slows down inflammation of your foodstuffs, delays, rotting essentially. So you cool down your meat, you make more energy in your mitochondria, and you don't age as fast. So we'll talk all about cold thermogenesis next week, some of the other benefits, and then we're going to have a special guest on that's going to share his experiences that are much hardcore than you guys have probably ever experienced with cold thermogenesis. And also I'll get into how he developed his mindset to be able to survive what he put himself through. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining tonight. for any other questions come in. I see it in the background. This was made by Cassidy, who works with us here at Apollo Cardiology. Her handiwork of a model of lipoprotein(a) or Lp(a). Previously done a talk on Lp(a). It's a very atherogenic, thrombogenic type of lipid particle. 20% of the population has this stuff. It's very similar to LDL particles, but it has this outer protein called apoprotein A. There's different Kringle lengths. Interesting lab company had developed something recently. I'm demoing it out with some patients right now. I haven't got the reports back, so I don't know how to really make use of it just yet until I get the reports back. But the information will tell you the Kringle length. The shorter the Kringles, the more Lp(a) low particles, and likely the more atherogenesis. So more likely it's going to develop plaque in your arteries. Right now, there's not great treatments for Lp(a). It's going to be about 2023 before the treatments come out, but I'll be able to potentially pick out the people who are at higher risk and should really consider the prescription medications in 3 years. Question, is it possible to measure or calculate heart rate variability without a device at home? No, because it requires a calculation of the RR interval. So on an EKG, you'll have a QRS. The Q is the first down wave, the RS is the up wave, and then there's a T wave where the heart is relaxing. And you're measuring the beat-to-beat difference on an EKG. So you need an ongoing rhythm strip. And your heart rate should change. It shouldn't always be 70, 70, 70, 70 like a metronome. As you breathe in, it expands. As you breathe out, it contracts as you're stimulating the vagus nerve. And you need some type of electric calipers to be measuring that millisecond difference. There are some at-home devices that can measure heart rate variability. One such device that I've used previously is called Elite HRV. The app is free, and they do sell their own measurement device. It looks just like a pulse oximeter. It's called a CoreSense, CoreSense. That's their device, but you can also use different heart rate straps. One of the devices I have is like a Whoop band, WHOOP. That will actually sync up to the Elite HRV app. There's different chest straps as well, mostly Polar H7s and the Polar H10s are known to work with it. They probably have a couple other bands that work with it as well. But typically the ones I played around most with are the CoreSense that's made by Elite HRV. I played with the Whoop band, and I've also played around with the Oura ring, O-U-R-A ring. That's mostly for sleep, but it does give you overnight heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is one of the things that I routinely measure myself to see if I'm kind of overdoing things. Right now I'm doing a program called 75 Hard. Many of you guys have heard me talk about it before. I have to work out essentially for at least 90 minutes a day. So sometimes you're probably going to overdo it. So I want to know how bad I'm overdoing it and if I can try to maximize recovery. You can see my face is lighting up red. I pretty much always live in a red light room if possible. But if I overdo things, then I'll actually, do a therapy with one of my photobiomodulation panels. The devices themselves, the CoreSense I think is about $130. Chest strap is probably $70. The Whoop band is now under subscription. So I basically signed up for 1 year and I'll play around with it and see if I actually want to keep it after that point. All right. Well, if there's no questions coming in tonight, I will put this up on my feed in just a little bit. Again, next week will be cold thermogenesis, how to use cold therapy to lower inflammation and improve your mitochondrial function. And then if anybody's interested in getting this, test, just see me in my office in St. Louis, Missouri, and we'll hook you up to it. Or if you're not in St. Louis, talk to your doctor about getting pulse wave analysis. The company that does that a lot is called MaxPulse, MaxPulse. Don't know exactly what an outside provider would charge you, for this test. I don't charge people at this point, but this is typically can be up to about $150 value at most places. So if you're interested in getting it done in St. Louis, come and see me. So hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.